Good morning. Good morning. How are you this morning? Today is Saturday. It's my first postscript Saturday of the new year. So happy new year, everyone. Welcome to 2025. And I am standing out here on my front porch so that you can see what a beautiful winter wonderland that we have here in Northern Virginia. And it's so exciting to be able to have a little extra gift of downtime after the holidays, because we were a little bit snowed in this week, and it was just so lovely to enjoy and embrace that downtime. Embrace is my word of the year this year, so I will take it all day long. And so I just thought I would show you how pretty it is here in Northern Virginia. And I hope you are doing well. And I am going to be talking to you today about something that's not all that fun and sexy in real estate. It's about pre-occupancy and post-occupancy agreements, which are part of our real estate world. But before I get into that, excuse me, I'm going to walk into my living room and get settled and share some valuable information with you, because as you know, I started Postscript Saturday, PS Saturday last March, and as a result of a lot of questions I was getting about what's happening in the real estate industry, and because there's been some shifts and changes, and there was a national lawsuit that got settled, and so I felt that it was important to kind of document for a year. I committed to a year the value of working with a real estate professional when you're buying, selling, or investing in real estate. So I still have my wreaths up. I still have our Christmas tree, which is going down this weekend. So with the weather, it was a little delayed. Anyhow, so today's topic is an important one, but just as a reminder, all of the topics here that I go over with you at Postscript Saturday are recorded and live on our YouTube channel. So this is actually considered a resource for you. I understand that not everyone has the need to learn about pre and post occupancy agreements. Oh, hey Mary, how you doing? Happy New Year to you. So nice of you to pop on. Just as a reminder, if you know of anyone that's thinking about buying or selling, this Postscript Saturday is really meant to be a resource. Speaking of resource, this is going to be dating me a little bit before I get into the topic. You can see I have the nice warm fire going here. Anyways, I was thinking about how everyone goes to the internet. Well, back in the day, I don't know if you know what this is. This is a encyclopedia, and we grew up with these in our home, and I was born in the mid 1960s, and this was our go-to here whenever we had a question. And I read about real estate this morning, and I forgot to earmark the page. Maybe I'll go over a history of real estate at another Postscript Saturday, but it was so fun to just check this out. It was kind of tucked in between Ronald Reagan and realism. It was real estate, and it talked about the profession, and it was just interesting. So just thought I'd do a little fun footnote for you. We're so spoiled going to the internet. So anyhow, again, I hope you're doing well. I'm gonna have a sip of my coffee. These dishes came from where Jerry and I were married, and we were married at the Greenbrier, and they don't even sell these anymore. We happened to go there over the holidays. I was a little reminiscing, and it was so fun. So anyways, today's topic. Before I start though, I do want to say that right now we are going through a very difficult time in California. We have family and friends out there, and just kind of putting this here that we pray, and we're thinking about everyone out there it's very devastating. They have some fires that are happening, and towns have been wiped out. Thousands of people have been misplaced from their homes, and it's so easy for us to be sitting here in our homes thinking about these people, but we really don't understand what they're going through. So if you have anyone that you need to have a lending hand to, if you want to donate, I have some suggestions. Just PM me. KW Cares, which is Keller Williams, has a great program for donations. And so if you can help financially, prayerfully, lending a hand to those in California, I'm just, making that awareness here, kind of earmarking this time. It's going to take a long time for these communities to regroup, and our hearts just go out to everyone out there in California. So, speaking of real estate, a lot of real estate has been damaged, and that's investments, and what we care about are the people, right, that matter most. But it's easy to say that, right, because in our homes we have things that have so much meaning to us, and I think about all the books that are gone, the photo albums, the wedding rings, the just like a grandmother's special brooch, or so many memories are gone, and important things. I mean, things aren't important, but there's like special things that remind us of people that we loved, and that are so memorable. Their homes bring us such joy and comfort, and so I just want to encourage everyone to embrace the day and enjoy the day, because we never know when things are just going to get wiped out. So oh, I'm so glad to hear that about your brother. Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's just so devastating. So anyways, excuse me, back on topic. Pre and post occupancy agreements. These are agreements that are put in place to have it outlined as to when a buyer is going to occupy the home. If they are not going to occupy the home on the settlement date of the purchase. So you have pre-occupancy and post-occupancy, and both are a little bit nuanced difference. Both have very similar terms, and so I'm going to go over a little bit of the elements of a pre and post occupancy agreement, why someone would do it, and some of the kind of like the understanding of what's really behind them, and some important information. So usually these pre and post occupancy agreements get agreed to at the time of agreement of a sales offer and a contract, but not always. Sometimes things happen during a transaction where you have to introduce a pre or post occupancy for a variety of different reasons. But for the most part, we kind of know up front if we need it. So first of all, the elements of an agreement, they have, just like a contract, you always have who the buyer and seller is, the term, the date it begins, the date it ends, the fees involved, who is paying the daily rate and the daily occupancy rate, and what is the calculation? Is it the mortgage payment, the principal, interest, and then the taxes and an insurance plus HOA, if there is an HOA? So you have to figure out, is it a per diem rate like that? Who's paying for it? Or is it just a flat fee? Or is it some other figure that both the buyer and seller come to an agreement on? The other fees are deposit. You always have to have a deposit. Well, don't have to. That's part of the terms. And then another fee is if either party do not comply with the original agreement. So let's just say if we have a pre-occupancy agreement, and that is usually happens when we have a vacant property, and so the buyer pre-occupies before the settlement date. And what if the buyer decides not to settle and they've preoccupied? So what are the fees involved for not complying with the settlement date? And vice versa, you have the same uh, opportunity in a post occupancy to figure out what the fees are if the seller doesn't move out, because a post occupancy allows the seller to stay in the property after settlement. So those are the fees. The verbiages in these agreements are, you have to make sure you understand who is responsible for what. For instance, the utilities. And if it's a pre-occupancy agreement, is the seller going to allow that buyer to make any alterations to the property? So you have to figure out some verbiage. You have to figure out who's going to be responsible for the insurance. So the point is that there's a lot of elements to an agreement that you need to have put in place, and then there's negotiations. And that's why having a professional realtor can really help guide you on what's normal and customary, and also what is in market trends. Because with the post occupancy agreement, which is also called a rent back in our area, that oftentimes right now, depending on the market, sometimes the sellers don't pay any fee for the rent back. It depends on the climate of the market. If it's a very competitive market and the buyer wants the property, they may say to the seller, you don't have any fees. So a realtor can really help you navigate and structure a pre and post occupancy agreement. Now, there's nuances with both. So just to be clear, I should have said it up front. Pre-occupancy is when the buyer occupies prior to settlement, and post-occupancy is when the seller stays in the property post-settlement agreement, also known as a rent back. So, why would someone want to do a pre-occupancy? As I said, usually if it's vacant. If the buyer has a timeline and needs to get into the house before settlement date, that's usually what happens. And then post is when sellers really want their funds in their hands before they go and purchase another property or move out of the property. Sellers are fearful that if they move everything out and for something happens and we don't get to settlement, they're stuck on the street or in their new property, and the buyer doesn't show up, and that can be a disaster. So oftentimes sellers want to settle and have at least a few days to be able to get their funds and move out. Excuse me. So, but there's some nuances, and one of the nuances is in the pre-occupancy agreement. Very important section is whether or not all the contingencies have been removed, and this is very important. Depending on the situation, best practices is you don't want the buyer moving into the property unless all the contingencies have been removed. So that's a nuance that's different than a post. You don't have that section in a post-occupancy agreement. Okay, so that's basically, how the pre and post work, and it's a tool to help in a scenario depending on the case. But one of my biggest points that I want to make sure I'm really clear on this is that these agreements are not landlord-tenant acts. The seller and the buyer do not become landlords and tenants. And this is a real critical piece to these agreements, because there's a lot of confusion. Excuse me, let me get a little more sip of my coffee. And so what that means is I'm going to take post-occupancy agreement, a rent back, where the seller is staying in the home after settlement. So after settlement, if the dishwasher breaks or the HVAC breaks or the garage door opener doesn't work anymore, ultimately the seller is responsible for that. That the seller's not going to go to the new buyer after settlement and say, hey, the dishwasher's broken, it's up to you. So no, the seller is still responsible for that repair and or replacement. The seller has to give the buyer the property in the similar condition as it was at the time of the contract and at the time of settlement. Now, on both cases, pre and post, you always have an opportunity for a walkthrough so that everything is recorded and in writing and is clear. But that is very important. Sometimes sellers get confused. They think, oh, it's a rent back. If something happens, I'm no longer obligated. And that is far from the truth. So you have to really have a good understanding of that. Now, to confuse things a little further, if there's a natural disaster, right, or like a tree falls on the house, for instance, which I have had happen, that would go to the buyer's new insurance company, because when there's a post occupancy agreement, the buyer's homeowner's insurance kicks in, and the seller has insurance on their personal belongings. So unless it's a national disaster, anything else, if red wine is on the carpet, if the banister breaks during move out, a component of the home fails, that the seller has to take care of it. So, the key with any of this is that as a seller and buyer, you have to understand what you are agreeing to. I'm very clear with our clients in the sense of informing them what they need to know about these agreements so that they understand what they're signing, and that there's no misunderstanding, miscommunication. So that's today's topic, pre and post settlement occupancy agreements, something that's a good tool for us to use in our real estate industry. And as I said, I hope you're doing well. I know for myself, I'm going to be clearing out all the holiday decor this weekend, getting ready to really start Monday with a bang. We have a lot going on at Love to List. And by the way, this is the time of year where people are thinking about actually selling in spring. So always here to help answer questions, help give you guidance. If you're thinking about buying or selling, please give me a call. Happy to help you. I'm in Loudoun County and I work Loudoun, Fairfax. But again, this is a tool for you. Consider this PS Saturday a resource for you, depending on the topic. So anyhow, I hope you're doing well. And in the meantime, thumbs up, lots of love, and keep smiling, okay? All right, take care, everyone.